Villanova's cut it to 8. Here goes DeBonsa driving and scoring. Flying high. Saunders with a rebound. Good action now. BYU's got the pace they want. DeBonsa pull up. Ooh, DeBonsa after being denied. Now he's talking a little trash.
The energy and effort from the big fella on display.
There's DeBonsa now. He drives, he hangs, and he finishes. A.J. DeBonsa.
EMC sets up Peterson downtown. Peterson again. Might be one of those nights. Peterson, Adunga, Council Jr. Peterson down the lane.
Those are the choices. DeBonsa and Peterson. The Wizards have been on the clock since the draft lottery all the way back on May 10th. That was an exciting day. Tonight, they'll finally make that first pick in the NBA's 2026 draft. A number one pick that Michael Winger, the team president, said right after the draft lottery is, quote, the ultimate reward for the fans, close quote. For the fans, I think Vinny Serrato once said. Good morning, everybody. This from Edward. Sheehan, you're nuts that you want Darren Peterson. He actually said in an interview with a team, he's antisocial and a loner. I think he only interviewed with one team, so I didn't read that he said that to the Wizards, but I did search that, and you're right, he did say it somewhere because I saw it pop up in multiple places without attribution. Okay, he's antisocial and a loner. I didn't know you needed to be social and an extrovert to be a great NBA player. I don't think it's a requirement. There's a lot of due diligence the Wizards have to do on Darren Peterson. I was very clear yesterday in terms of ceiling as a basketball player. I would want them to take Darren Peterson, but that's not the only thing that goes into a decision on making a pick, especially when you are at number one overall. It's a huge investment. It's a huge task, and you want to get it right. And you know what? Over the last 26 years, 26 number one picks this century, 13 of them, nothing, basically nothing. It's a 50-50 proposition at the top of the draft, especially when you don't have a clear-cut number one. This from Jones. Jones wrote, you are correct that Peterson would have been the absolute lock number one pick overall had he had, as you said, a normal college basketball season. But the point is, Kevin, he didn't. Yeah, I know that. I know he didn't. And that's where the complexity comes in, especially for us, because we don't know anywhere near enough to know what the situation with Darren Peterson is. That's why I, prefaced my conclusion yesterday with this is simply from a basketball standpoint. I do like A.J. DeBonsa. I like him a lot. I like Darren Peterson and Caleb Wilson as basketball players better. That's all. Doesn't mean that I don't like A.J. DeBonsa or I don't think A.J. DeBonsa is going to be good. I do. I think he's going to be very good. I think he's going to be a big-time NBA scorer. I just think the potential for true elite-level play exists in Darren Peterson and Caleb Wilson. I would also throw Acuff Jr. into that mix as well. Usually you don't take that kind of a player number one overall, but I really like Acuff Jr. from Arkansas. I think he's going to potentially lead the league in scoring 5-6 years down the road. Michael Winger's quote is, and was a nice outreach to the Wizards fan base. I count myself among Wizards fans, lifelong Bullet Wizard fan. There's been an endurance test for sure over the last 3 years, and it's really more than that because they haven't been good and we haven't had a real season in terms of feeling like there was a chance to get to the postseason and actually maybe win a series or two since 2017. I mean, we're going on season 10, and that's a decade without having much hope. I do think that changes next year, and I'll get to the Trae Young extension in a moment. But look, I don't feel like there's any reward with the Wizards holding the number 1 pick. I don't think that's the right way to frame it. I think the way to frame it is you guys have endured a lot. We asked you to endure a lot. And now we have to make sure that this number 1 pick, along with everything else we've been doing, pays off in the form of the ultimate reward for you fans. Number 1 pick, that's not what I was in it for. You know, that's not what most of you were in it for. Now, the number 1 pick when Wemby came out, that would have been different. Had they tanked, had they gotten number 1 that year with the tanking and with the losing, that would have been phenomenal. But it was Wizards' luck, of course, during that particular season. This from Daryl. Daryl writes, Kevin, I'm a community psychologist. I don't even know what that means, but Daryl, that's what you are, and I'm sure you're very good at it. He said, I thought the conversation about Darren Peterson's anxiety over his emergency room visit is very interesting. He may have something called panic attack disorder. Ding, 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 Daryl. That's what I was kind of leading to when we had our guest, Adam Finkelstein, on the show yesterday. He was very good, by the way. I really enjoyed the conversation with Adam. And he really likes Darren Peterson, but he'd go with DeBonsa. He would absolutely go with DeBonsa over Peterson because of a lot of this stuff. And he reminded me of this story that Ramona Shelburne wrote. Ramona Shelburne wrote a story all the way back on May 8th, titled Darren Peterson Says High Doses of Creatine Led to Cramping. And when he mentioned that story, I remember reading it and I remember thinking, and I'm pretty sure I talked about it, certainly I talked about it with Tommy on the podcast, that this guy may have really been traumatized by a September visit to the emergency room. And he said that the headline really was not the lead of the story. The lead of the story was this very traumatizing emergency room visit that Darren Peterson had back in September. It wasn't that he may have been overtaking high doses of creatine. Now, that could have been part of what created the cramping condition that he had. But I want to read from the Ramona Shelburne story about Darren Peterson on May 8th. Again, the story was titled Darren Peterson Says High Doses of Creatine Led to Cramping. And that's what the first part of the story is about. But then Ramona Shelburne gets to this part of the story. Peterson, who is ranked as the number 2 prospect available in next month's draft by ESPN's Jeremy Woo, said his issues started last year with a scary episode after an annual week-long boot camp in September that sent him to the hospital in an ambulance. First, his legs started cramping, then his stomach, back, arms, and hands. Eventually, his whole body was cramping. Quote from Darren Peterson for this story: I made it to the training room, just started begging them to call 911. They were trying to get a vein to get me the IV, to get me hydrated, but I was cramping so hard they couldn't get a vein. I thought I was going to die on the training table that day. Close quote. Ramona Shelburne continues in her story that was about creatine. Finally, at the hospital, the emergency room doctors were able to get a vein and give him several bags of fluids intravenously. Peterson stayed there for several hours, being treated for what doctors thought was severe dehydration. He said he was sore for days afterward, but pushed to return to play. The experience, though, was far from over. The full body cramp was so intense, Peterson said, that he struggled to shake the fear that it could happen again. Quote, whenever I felt anything like that come on, my initial thought was that it might get to that again. And I can't let that happen and then be embarrassed and have that on TV and all that. It kind of put me in a tizzy because I didn't know what was causing it. Nothing has ever been wrong with me before. Basketball is my life, what I love to do, but something was going on and I couldn't figure it out. My biggest thing was I'm going to keep trying because we don't know what's wrong and we can't say something's wrong. So I'm going to go out there, and when it happens, I'm going to ask to come out. I don't know if that was a right or a wrong move. Closed quote. So, Daryl, I think you nailed it. And I think my guest yesterday, Adam Finkelstein, focused on the right part of this creatine story. Of course, creatine and a high dosage of creatine could have been the reason for cramping, although Adam did mention that there have been some holes punched in that story. But I think the key quote from him is that he struggled to shake the fear that it could happen again. That emergency room visit where he thought he was dying in September, 2 months before the season began, excuse me. That thing had him thinking all season long. This is a projection. This is, speculation. But Daryl brought it up. I certainly know a little bit about panic attack syndrome, familiar with it. And I think that there's some sort of psychological fear that he has to overcome. Now, does this make it easier or harder? Let's just say that what he was dealing with all year long was this fear of going into this full body cramp that was so intense that it caused him to scream out, call 911. He was transported in an ambulance to an emergency room where he thought he was going to die. Nobody wants to go through that again, even if there was an explanation, which was that he was, dehydrated. That was the explanation. But I think he lived in fear of that the rest of the year. That's why he pulled himself out of games. That's why he missed some games. The key game is to go back to their matchup against number 1 Arizona. Arizona coming to Lawrence, Kansas for one of the biggest regular season games of the college basketball season. Can't wait to see Darren Peterson matched up against the number 1 team at Fog Allen, one of the top places in the country for college basketball. There's no discussion about whether or not he's going to play. He's going to play. He's ready to play. And then 30 minutes before, he tells his coach, I can't go. I don't feel well. Was he cramping? Or was he just in fear of cramping and having something terrible happen to him? Panic attack syndrome, anxiety-related syndromes like that, it's the fear of impending doom. And that's what he described. And that's what he described having fear of. I'm not a psychologist. I just play one on radio, but Daryl apparently is. I thought, Daryl, when you wrote that to me and I read that, I'm like, that's what I was thinking about as it relates to him when Adam was on yesterday. And then when I went back and read the Ramona Shelburne story, it doesn't make it easier because that may be more difficult for the Wizards or any NBA team to get through, that this guy has some level of psychological illness that he has to get through. He's got to fight because you don't want Kevin Love went through this. Remember, Kevin Love literally left the bench because he was having panic attacks. He didn't get them until he was in the pros. We had DeMar DeRozan, who had depression and anxiety-related issues. Kevin Love was the first really to come out and talk about some of these things as a professional athlete. The fear. There's a tennis player, and I'm forgetting his name. Marty, not Marty Supreme. That was a ping pong player. By the way, really good movie. Chalamet's excellent in Marty Supreme. I'm forgetting Marty's last name. Marty Fish. Marty, there's a really good story about the anxiety-related, panic attack-related stories that Marty Fish went through. He literally was heading to Madison Square Garden to face Roger Federer in the finals of the Masters, and he had an anxiety attack in the vehicle and couldn't go. Needed to take himself to an emergency room. Couldn't go, couldn't play it. Kevin Love talked about some of the similar things. This is a real thing. Now, the issue is if that's part of this whole psychological profile, or maybe the creatine was the issue and he's now got the answer he needs and his mind is clear. He's not going to overdose or take high dosages of creatine anymore. They can monitor his hydration, make sure he never has, a cramp again. But just everybody cramps occasionally. Is just one cramp going to send him into, oh my God, I need to go to the emergency room? Somebody needs to call 911? It's a tough spot to be in if this is what they're dealing with. I think it's fascinating with Darren Peterson because, God, man, watch some of his games. Watch how easy it is for him to score. This is a 6'5", 6'5.5", long wingspan, such a methodical, subtle, incredible with the ability, with the dribble, with movements to create space. He can shoot over you off the dribble. He can catch and shoot. He can drive and finish at the rim. I can't believe how little's been said about, I think, a guy that really defended well. He averaged a steal and a half a game. That's pretty damn good. Now, a lot of it, when you watched him, or if you go back and watch the highlight reels, a lot of the steals are off-ball steals. He's just one of those guys that sniffs out that next pass. One pass or two passes away, he knows it's coming, and he's able to get into a passing lane and knock it away. And a lot of his steals were those kinds of steals. By the way, the all-time best at that in college basketball, I'm telling you, Juan Dixon was an absolute thief defensively, playing off the ball. It was hard for him to stop somebody with the ball in front of him, but off the ball, he just had that nose, that anticipation for where that next pass was going, and always timed it up well. Boom, it's going the other way. Quick hands, too. Really quick hands. Quick hands, quick feet. Just not strong enough, really, at the NBA level to guard. Darren Peterson's different. Darren Peterson has a great build. I think he'll be a good defender in the NBA. I mean, I might regret saying that, but I think a lot of it's going to be want to, but I think he's going to be a good defender. But there's a lot there with this kid, a lot there. And to my first, emailer of the day, Edward, who said that he actually, said, I'm antisocial and a loner. That kind of fits in maybe with some of the profile as well, although I'd let Daryl, the community psychologist, answer some of that. But the point being is that there's a lot going on and has been a lot going on with this kid. And at number one overall, if you don't have firm answers and a really good feel for the kid, not the game is unmistakable. I said it yesterday. This would be a no-brainer had he had a regular college basketball season. He'd be the number one pick. In my opinion, no-brainer. DeBonsa would be number two, or DeBonsa, Boozer, and Caleb Wilson would be fighting for number two. But this isn't a normal situation, which, by the way, of course, is so Wizards-like, right? That there isn't an obvious number one overall. Although the last time they had number one overall, John Wall, was pretty obvious. Michael Winger and Will Dawkins, the ultimate reward is you guys getting this right. And I know, I can only imagine, it's not easy. It's not easy. Here's the list of number one NBA draft picks all time. You ready for this list? I'm not going to give you the all-time list. I'm going to give you this decade, all right? It started with Kenyon Martin, the Nets in 2000. 2001. In terms of, when you take somebody number one, what are you expecting? A star. 2001, we remember Kwame Brown. 0 for 2. Yao Ming was the pick in 2002. I think an 8-time NBA All-Star is worth number one overall. That's 1 and 2. All right, I'll keep count of this. 1 that absolutely hit, 2 that haven't. 2003, LeBron James, 2 and 2. 2004, Dwight Howard, 3 and 2. 3 hits, 2 misses. And then how about this run? Bogut, Bargnani, Oden, 3 straight misses. So you're at 3 hits, 5 misses in the first 8 years of the decade. Derrick Rose in 2008. Look, he was an MVP, and it's injuries. I'm going to count that as the right pick, as a hit. All right, so that's 4 and 5 in terms of the hits. And then we got in 2009, we got Blake Griffin. 6-time NBA All-Star, that's a hit. First 10 years of this century, 5 hits, 5 misses. Then we get to the second part of the second decade of this century. John Wall was a hit, period. I mean, John Wall at number 1 overall was a 5-time NBA All-Star. I mean, that was a hit. He was not, the elite true superstar, but nor was Blake Griffin. And I gave him, a nod. Kyrie Irving was next. That's a hit. All right. Anthony Davis after that. That's a hit. 3 straight hits there. All right. So 8 hits, 5 misses. Number 1 overall pick. Now 2013, Anthony Bennett. No. Andrew Wiggins. I'm sorry. No. Not as a number 1 pick. Karl Anthony Towns in 2015. He's been a 6-time NBA All-Star. I would call that a hit. So we're at what? Where are we now? 9 and 7? Is that where we were? Let's see.
Yep.
6 and 5, 7, 5, 8 and 5, 8 and 6, 8 and 7, 9 and 7. Ben Simmons, 9 and 8. Markelle Fultz, 9 and 9. DeAndre Ayton, 9 and 10. 10 misses, 9 hits. Zion Williamson, not yet. 9 and 11. Now we have had a nice little run here, though. All right. Anthony Edwards, hit. Cade Cunningham, hit. I think Banchero is going to be a hit. You agree with that, Max? It's early.
I will for now.
I mean, he was the rookie of the year. He was an all-star already. So I'm counting that as a hit. Victor Wembanyama, ding, ding, ding. And then we've got Rissache. It doesn't look like that's going to be a hit. And then Cooper Flagg. It's early, but it looks like it's going to be a hit. So where did we get to? 14 and 12? 14 hits, 12 misses?
Sounds right.
Yeah, I thought it was 13 and 13 when I did it yesterday. But basically barely over a 50-50 proposition for the number 1 pick in this century. It's hard. NBA is even harder, man. The NFL's really hard. The NBA is even harder. The difference with the NBA is when you have a clear-cut number 1, which is so obvious, it usually does hit. Like I'll give, except for recently Zion Williamson. But Wembanyama was an obvious number 1 and everybody thought going to be a great player. Zion Williamson has not panned out to be that. And then I think to go back to find the last, real, he's going to be a superstar, number 1 pick. I think you go to Dwight Howard and LeBron in back-to-back years, both hits. Duncan in 97, Shaq in 92, Danny Manning in 88, David Robinson in 87, Ewing in 85, the first year of the lottery. So number 1 overall, when number 1 is an obvious number 1 where everybody thinks this is can't miss, that usually works. But that's not what this draft is with DeBonsa and Peterson. A lot of debate over which one. A lot of risk. But then again, you'd rather be in this spot than anywhere else. Tonight should be fun. I have no idea what they're going to do, but I would lean DeBonsa. I would lean that they're going to take DeBonsa, but I've listened to everybody and read everybody over the last week. And even this morning, Windhorst, who, usually has something, said the Wizards haven't said anything to anybody. Agents don't know, players don't know, people around the league don't know. Wouldn't it be crazy if they shocked everybody and took Caleb Wilson, number one? I think it's going to be DeBonsa. I think the player, if he, ends up checking the boxes that aren't basketball related, that has the biggest upside is Darren Peterson. All right, go get him, Winger and Dawkins. Big night. And there has been discussion, by the way, after they make that pick at number one, don't tune out. There has been discussion about the Wizards trying to trade back into the first round to take another player. They have a lot of draft capital, a ton of draft capital to work with. Of course, are we going to get the NBA thing again? It's the dumbest thing ever. I don't know how they haven't fixed this. When they get picked by a team, but they've actually been traded, but they come out in the team's, hat, and they're not going to play for that team. Can we, get the trades finalized, announced, and put the correct team on the clock tonight? Is that so hard? Doesn't seem so hard, but I have a feeling we're going to have to, sit through that, those shenanigans again tonight, where it's like you see the crawl going by, and it's like, nope, he's actually not going to play for them. Nope, he's not going to play for them either. He got traded. Trae Young got himself a contract. Wow, that amount floored me, but apparently there's an explanation. We'll get to that next.
Bobby, I think this is instantaneously one of the worst contracts in the league. I'm sorry I said that. I'm sorry I said it that way. I don't mean to be mean.
You can't trade
I don't
it.
think I don't think they could trade this contract unless they attach the number 1 pick to it.
Wait, that was Windhorst, right?
Yeah, it was.
Tell me what he was talking about specifically.
He was talking about the Trae Young contract.
Oh, the one that he just signed.
Yes.
Okay, play it again.
Bobby, I think this is instantaneously one of the worst contracts in the league. I'm sorry I said that. I'm sorry I said it that way. I don't mean to be mean.
You can't trade
I don't
it.
think I don't think they could trade this contract unless they attach the number 1 pick to it.
That's good. So Trae Young, it was reported yesterday by ESPN's Shams Charania that he intends to stay with Washington, which we knew, but at a contract of 4 years, $212 million. Now, the fourth year apparently is a player option. But if you do that math, it's pretty easy. It's $53 million a year. $53 million a year. Just for some perspective, it doesn't even put him in the top 10. It puts him outside the top 10 in average annual salary in the NBA. Yes, NBA players make really, really good money. Even the players that are at the end of the bench make excellent money. I saw this and I was surprised by it as well. And then I did some reading and found out that essentially the Wizards didn't give Trae Young a max deal. This would have been a max deal for other teams in the league had they signed Trae Young to this deal in free agency. The Wizards actually, with the bird rights and given that he was on the team this year, that they could have gone 75 to 80 million, I think it was written, more than what they did. I still don't consider it to be a deal for Trae Young. It just seems like so much money. Let me tell you the first thing I thought of. The first thing I thought of was, shouldn't Atlanta have gotten more for Trae Young if this was going to be his market in free agency? They got Corey Kispert and CJ McCollum's expiring contract. But maybe Atlanta thought nobody's going to give him this kind of money. The reports last week when he opted out of his player, when he declined the player option, was that he'd get 3 for 120, 3 for 130, 3 for 140, something like that. 3 for 150. I did go back and look to see all of the guesses. 3 for 150 is $50 million a year for 3 years. It's a lot of money. This is a $53 million a year deal. Look, the bottom line is this. The Wizards traded for him, and then they traded for Anthony Davis because they want to have a grown-up team in 2026, 2027. They want their young players playing meaningful basketball games. You know, Michael Winger was on with me after the Davis trade, I think it was, and we talked about that. He said, look, you know, development is great, and they've done a great job of developing all of our young players, but it's not the same as developing in an environment where you're playing teams that are playing you seriously. He didn't, those are my words, but this is sort of what he talked about. He talked about the way teams perceive us when they come in, you know, games that are important in the standings. I get that. That makes total sense to me. You know, when you're playing games with a bunch of young players and a team that's obviously tanking, the opponent's not going to take it as seriously, so you're not often getting their best. You're not, you know, in any sort of legitimate win situations, pressure situations to win, because winning isn't even the goal. So at some point, all of these young players, the Koulibalys and the Sars and the Trey Johnsons and the Keyshawn Georges, et cetera, they got to play in some games that matter. That's a better developmental environment. So by going and getting Trae Young and getting Anthony Davis, the idea was we can actually be a competitive team with meaningful games and perhaps be a playoff team in 2026, 2027. Now our young players are really getting the proper developmental environment. And we're going to add a very high draft pick. You know, when they made those trades, they didn't know it would be number 1 overall, but we know now it's going to be number 1 overall to the mix. And so, I I think the key here, though, is they overpaid for the player if there was a market for the player. I don't have the answer to that. They must have believed that there was a team out there that was going to pay him that kind of max level deal, which would have been a max deal for every team but the Wizards. But there must have been a team out there that was willing to do it, and the Wizards had to pay that because it's not like they gave up a lot in the trade. They didn't. They certainly didn't get anything out of Trae Young. The purpose wasn't to get anything out of Trae Young in 2026 in terms of this past season. And then they're pairing him up with Anthony Davis and the number 1 pick and all of the other young players. And now our young players, we can really find out whether or not the young players we have are what we think they are, because they'll be playing in real games that matter. And look, if there wasn't a market for Trae Young anywhere near 4 years, $212 million, they overpaid. And I'll tell you, my first blush was, God, I thought it was like 3 for $120. I thought it was like going to be $40 million a year, which is a lot of money anyway. So, there are a couple of things that are interesting about the Trae Young. This was not unexpected that Trae Young would be, signed. What's unexpected, I think, for a lot is the actual money. And again, the Wizards obviously want him and want him under contract and want him to play for them. But we don't know what the market for him was like. Man, Atlanta didn't think the market was going to be very big because they basically gave him to the Wizards. But, the NBA's funny, man, because, when free agency looks bleak, and it looks bleak this year in terms of available players, you get a lot of players, Jan Mahinmi, that end up getting a lot more money than you think. And Trae Young would have been and was, one of the bigger named free agents in a year that's not great for free agents. By the way, I haven't mentioned the Giannis deal. Man, if I were a Milwaukee fan, I would have wanted Jaylen Brown. And I would have wanted the first-round picks from Boston, not the Miami deal. But what do I know? I think Jaylen Brown is a superstar, personally. I think he is a number 1. I thought there was a chance he was going to prove it during the postseason, and he didn't. They lost to the Sixers. I put that more on coaching, on them shooting 150 threes a game, even when they weren't making them. It was stupid. But the Trae Young contract value is only stupid if there wasn't anybody else that was going to be in the ballpark of that. But they wanted the player. Now, here's something. I had a friend of mine who's a coach in the area. He texted me last night afterwards, and he said, well, now it's DeBonsa. And I said, really? He's like, it's DeBonsa now because Darren Peterson's a point guard. And I'm like, yeah, but there aren't – the NBA's positionless to me now. And by the way, I could see Young and Peterson playing together. I could see that. I mean, Darren Peterson needs to have the ball in his hands, but he's also pretty good off the ball, even though I know his camp wants him to be a point guard. Trae Young is a good catch and shoot guy. Now, that's not the way he's played, but I think he'd be fine. I think he'd be absolutely fine with the two of them in the backcourt together. I don't see those issues anymore. I mean, we had Victor Wembanyama essentially initiating the offense for, 20, 25% of the time in the playoffs as a 7'5" player. The NBA is so positionless. There's not a full-time, all-time point guard. I mean, I know Jalen Brunson is, but Jalen Brunson's a scorer. He's looking to score with the ball in his hands. I mentioned this to Max, and Max said that there's somebody that agrees with me on this, and that somebody is John Wall. So play the sound. I haven't heard the sound yet. I want to hear what he said.
John, the Wizard himself, I got to start with you. If you are the Wizards, who would you take with the number 1 pick?
For me, see, I look at it like this, right? You got Trae Young coming back. You know what I mean? We know how talented, how gifted he is. He's 20 and 10 whenever he step on the floor. He needs the ball in his hands to be Trae Young. AJ DeBenson needs the ball to be who he is. He's not one of those guys that run off pin downs, catch and shoot, spot up guy. So for me, if you're gonna keep Trae Young, for me, I like Darren Peterson because he has all that. He has everything to his game. If you watch him at Kansas, he played off the ball a lot. Then he can go get the ball, and that's what I would take. If you're not signing Trae Young back, which you're probably gonna have to, then you got to take AJ if you don't sign Trae Young back. I like AJ a lot. I think he has like a lot of T-Mac in him, stuff like that. But I think he's more ball dominant than what they need. And for Trae Young, I don't see him playing without the basketball. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I like what John said. John also added the caveat that A.J. DeBonsa needs the ball in his hands. You know, even though people kind of have projected him to be, you know, a 3 or a power forward, you know, when you go small, he needs the ball. The best players in the league need the ball in their hands. It doesn't matter what position they play. And most of them start with the ball in their hands on the perimeter. The best scorers in the game do. Durant does. Luka does. I mean, Victor Wembanyama did during the postseason. He was much more comfortable out there than he was down low. Shea needs the ball. Anthony Edwards needs the ball. I mean, Brown and Tatum both need the ball. Kawhi Leonard needs the ball, and he had a big year. Mitchell and Harden, they played together. They both need the ball. Now, neither one of them, you know, likes to participate on the other end of the floor. I don't have any issue with Darren Peterson and Trae Young playing on the same team and playing at the same time. I don't think that I don't know. Maybe that's a factor. Maybe they see A.J. DeBonsa as a guy that doesn't need the ball in his hands. By the way, you know what? This conversation is dumb because this shouldn't be the conversation. The conversation should be we're taking the player that has the best chance to become a future MVP, period. Any position. We don't care who we have on our roster. Does anybody think that the Wizards have a future MVP on their roster not named because it's possible that Anthony Davis at 34, 35 years old could have one of those dominant Anthony Davis seasons and be in the conversation? But other than that, and that seems like a long shot because he just doesn't play enough anymore, is there a future MVP candidate? Like, I like Keyshawn George. I actually like Will Riley a lot, but I don't consider them to be guys that 5 years from now, 4 years from now, or 3 years from now are going to be elite top 5 kind of players. That's who you should be drafting, that guy, because you need one of those to go deep and to win it all. And if you don't have one, who cares if it's redundant at a position? If they believe Darren Peterson is going to be, you know, a ball in his hands, primarily superstar in 5 years, who cares that Trae Young needs the ball this year? Trae Young's not that player. Trae Young's not going to contend for an MVP. I hated the trade for Trae Young when they made it because he's not one of my favorite players to watch. With that said, when they traded for Anthony Davis, I actually can envision Trae Young and Anthony Davis playing very well together. I think it's a good fit. I think that's a two-man pick and roll, pick and pop combo that will be very difficult for teams to check because Trae Young is a creator and Trae Young is a shot maker. Trae Young is just too ball dominant for me at times and is literally a massive liability on the defensive end. But I'm more in favor of Trae Young being a part of the roster because Anthony Davis is here. And I said this when it happened after the Davis trade. I could see next year Young, Davis, Sarr, Coulibaly, Trey Johnson, Peterson or DeBonsa, or Caleb Wilson, Will Riley, Keyshawn. I could see an 8-9 man rotation, 9-man, depth chart that with Anthony Davis healthy, that's the number one most important thing, that they could win 45 plus games and be a top 5 seed, top 6 seed, avoid the play-in. I do see that with that group. Now, there are a lot of things we don't know. What kind of coach is Keefe in a season in which you're trying to win? That hasn't been something he's actually done at the pro level. But, yeah, They should be trying to pick the best player, the player they think has the best chance to be a star, not the player that fits best with the group that they have. They're not ready to win a title. They're not adding just one more key piece. But I think I agree with John Wall. I don't see a problem with Peterson and Trae Young on the same roster. I just think it's so much more of a positionless league. All right, we're gonna do a lot of draft today, but I've got a good football. What do you got when we come back? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. All right, I missed something yesterday. I don't think you missed it, Max. I think I missed it because I do think you mentioned it to me, and I think you had it in the rundown, and I just glossed over it. But when we were talking about, Brandon Ayuk's latest video message on Father's Day evening, where he said that he had a great Father's Day, and then he said, "Go Commanders, go Commanders, go Commanders, raise hail, take command." And then he posted a photo of Mark Rippon. We talked about that. Mark Rippon, of course, our last Super Bowl MVP. In the last Super Bowl our team played in, the Redskins beating the Bills in Super Bowl 26 in the Minneapolis Metrodome lifetimes ago. What I didn't mention on the show yesterday, and pretty sure you did try to tell me to mention it, and I just
It wasn't
botched
me, actually. It was one Ben Standick who brought it up.
George Kittle.
Oh, this. You glossed over I thought you were going to be talking about the Rippon thing. But yes,
No,
George Kittle.
George Kittle.
Yes, let
George,
me pull it.
You mentioned this in our pre-show meeting yesterday, and I totally forgot to bring it up. George Kittle was on Pardon My Take, the
Correct.
Pardon My Take podcast.
Shout out producer Jacob, my little brother.
There you go.
Had to
And
get
he
it
was
in there.
asked about how Ayuk looked the last time he saw him on the field. And George Kittle said, quote, "I used to make it a habit of mine to go out early in the morning before meetings to watch him train because he'd always be out there early." Let me just interject. That's a good sign. First to work, guy out there working out early. That's usually a good thing. Guy's first one in. Jaden's the first one in. Maybe they'd be fighting each other to be the first one in. And then Kittle said, "And I watched him run over 22 miles an hour and watched him stop on a dime. He's still got it." But that was 8 months ago. So I don't really know. You guys have fun with that, I guess. You have fun with all that comes with that, closed quote. He is an exceptional route runner. He's exceptional in his top-end speed. This is what he was at the end of 2023. I know that some of you are like, what are you talking about? I barely knew who he was. No, he was coming. He had a great 2023, and it was obvious in terms of this guy's got what it takes to be in that, maybe not Jefferson Chase, at the time, Tyreek Hill category, but next below, with maybe A.J. Brown. So now Puka Nacua and some others. Man, there's some great receivers in the league. And then there was one more Kittle line. He was responding to the notion that Ayuk wants to be in Washington, as we all know, and that once he's here, he's going to be a happy camper. And Kittle said, quote, "Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't be happy either after a team paid me $130 million, closed quote." So I'm reading that as sarcasm, correct?
I wouldn't be happy either after a team paid me $130 million.
Yeah. By the way, it was $120 million. He's not suggesting that Washington would pay him $130 million, right?
No. He's talking about the Niners.
Yeah. The deal in aggregate was 120. He didn't get 120. He got 50 of the 120 because the rest of it was basically, or a lot of it was voided. Yeah, so it's kind of like, to me, in reading this, there's a bit of a mixed message there, right? Go ahead and play the whole thing. I forgot that you had the audio. We're real organized today.
But thank you. I thought PFT was going to ask me if he was going to steal Brandon Ayuk from
Okay,
here.
so the question I was going to say,
I've been on 10 times. You're scared to ask me a question? Come on.
I know that like it's a sensitive thing because like you like the guy.
Me?
I'm gonna let you guys talk while I eat a Reese's. Because you like the guy and the whole rehabbing away from the team, that can be tough on everybody. So I get that. How good is he still? Like the last time you saw him play, like how excited should I be to probably have him on the Commanders?
The last time I saw Ayuk was, call it week 6, 7, or 8. I don't really know. But I used to make it a habit of mine to go out early in the morning before meetings to watch him train because he'd always be out there early. And I watched him run over 22 miles an hour and stop on a dime. So he's still got it.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least, that was 8 months ago. So I don't really know. But yeah, you guys have fun with that, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
That's perfectly
yeah.
put.
I'm gonna have a lot of fun with that.
Perfectly put.
I guess.
Still got it. Have fun with that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have fun with all that comes with it.
Yeah. I mean, he seems like he's very active on social media, which, that's a great way to connect with fans and
true.
brands and sponsors.
Yeah.
So it seems like this, once he gets to us, then he'll finally be happy and every bad thing's going to go away.
Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't be happy either after a team paid me $130 million.
I know.
Yeah. So there is certainly some recognition of his talent and his ability and maybe even his current capability, but there's obviously a tinge of, be careful. Yeah, that's, I think we're all in that spot, after all of these videos. The guy appears to just maybe have a loose screw or two. But I still think he's going to end up being a Washington wide receiver in 2026. I do. I'm still leaning in that direction. Again, Ben has said it a number of times. If Washington weren't going to be a team that was interested in a Brandon Ayuk that was available, I think we'd know it by now. Toby Aldheiser, who does some really good work for 106.7 The Fan, he's going to be a part of the draft coverage tonight on the radio stations in town. He will join me next. So a couple of things real quickly. At 1:10 today on the station, Chris is going to have both James Wood and CJ Abrams on the show. The Nats beat the Phillies in the first of 4 with the Phils last night, 4-1. By the way, Dylan Cruz has gotten it going a little bit here recently. They are once again 3 games above 500. But 1:10 today on Chris's show, James Wood and CJ Abrams, certain to be, by the way, all-stars next month. Our draft coverage tonight begins at 7 p.m. here on the Team 980. The Junkies will be live at the Anthem doing a draft show. And then following the Junks, 9 to 11 on 980. My guest right now, Toby Altheiser, along with Ben Strober. They will be hosting draft coverage. And it's possible the Wizards could be back on the clock at some point later on in the first round. Toby is with us right now. Toby does a great job on 106.7 The Fan and occasionally here on the Team 980. Listen to Toby and follow him on X at Toby_Altheiser, Altizer. He's also the Nats postgame host. By the way, let's just start with that because I know you're doing the draft show. But am I right that all of a sudden Dylan Cruz is – I know the batting average is still sub 200, but it seems like over the last week he's starting to see it a little bit better.
Yeah, he's putting charge into a lot of baseballs recently, Kevin. It's something that is noticeable whenever you watch him, and he's hitting some bad luck. But you look at some of the expected numbers, which, take that for what it's worth. But compared to what we've seen in previous seasons, it's much better. So, yeah, I mean, under the hood, he looks a lot better this season than he has in previous years, even though the results don't necessarily say that.
I mean, Foster Griffin, again last night with another impressive outing, went 7 1/3 against that Phillies lineup, gave up 4 hits, just 1 earned run. His ERA now is down to 3.15. He is 8-2 on the year, and he's a 30-year-old rookie. For those that don't understand why, can you explain it?
Yeah, so he started his career with the Royals, and it just didn't pan out for him there. He was kind of coming up. He was a decent prospect for them, eventually got his chance at the majors, and it just didn't really work out. So he went over to Japan and spent multiple seasons over there. Had been really, really good the last few. So the Nationals gave him a try to come back over here to the States, and he's been spectacular. He's a little bit old school, Kevin. He's not going to blow you away with 98 or anything crazy in terms of velocity, but he's going to sit there low 90s, and he's going to throw you a bunch of different offerings. And Grant was going through some of the numbers last night on the postgame show about his pitch mix, and I think he's got 6 different pitches that he throws at least 10% of the time, and he has 7 total pitches. So he's going to throw you the kitchen sink, and you just don't know what's coming. And the Nationals did a good job throughout spring training where they basically only had him. I think he only faced the Marlins twice. Every other time he was pitching on the backfield. So nobody aside from Miami came into the year with any book on this guy. And now, obviously, at the midway point of the season, people have at least an understanding of him. But aside from the occasional blip on the radar, which he had about a month and a half ago, he's been spectacular. And I think part of it is just his maturity, obviously being a 30-year-old, but even though he's a rookie, like you said, it's not like he's inexperienced in terms of professional baseball. He played in Japan and was really good over there, an all-star over there. And then coming back here, some of that maturity, being able to mix pitches, mix speeds. I mean, he's just been so impressive to watch and a little bit old school when you're watching Skeens and Scooble and all these top guys blow you away with 99 at the top of the zone. Here comes Foster Griffin throwing you 90-mile-an-hour cutters and pitching almost as well as some of those guys at the top of the league.
Yeah, I was watching last night, and you're right. Like he struck out 9 last night and good bat hitters. I mean, he struck out a red hot Schwarber twice last night. Schwarber's been on fire, and he was 0 for 4 last night. But in watching him, like you think back to like guys that do it more with their brain than they do it with pure, talent and athleticism. And I always think back to some of the starts that Annabelle Sanchez had during that 2019 run. I mean, there was nothing thrown, I don't even think in the low 90s, it seemed like. And yet he had an outing against the Cardinals in the NLCS that was unbelievable. Now he's a right-hander and this guy is a lefty, but it's a similar approach. It's more with their brain than it is with anything else.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of artists, right? It's painting the corners, it's mixing speeds, it's just making sure that the hitters are always off balance. And I mean, Kevin, when you've got 7 different pitches and the guys don't really have a book on you and you're willing to throw any pitch in any count, I mean, good luck trying to guess along with this guy. Maybe if you guess correctly, maybe you can get to him because his offerings aren't necessarily in terms of velocity elite, but when he's locating, which he was last night, and Blake Butera said after the game that he felt like his stuff was extra sharp as well. I mean, good luck, because you have to be ready for so many different things. And he's a smart pitcher too, just talking to him, just the way that he understands that, hey, if I'm going to be out here to try to go like last night into the 8th inning, all right, maybe I only show 2 or 3 pitches the first time through, and then I mix in a 3rd or a 4th pitch on the next time through. And then if I'm going 3rd time through the order, I can mix in those other 2. And all of a sudden, you've got a really great repertoire that you haven't really seen your first 2 times up to the plate. So he's been so impressive to watch this season. And honestly, when you look at across Major League Baseball at signings of pitchers, there's not many better than Foster Griffin, especially bang for your buck. And no one expected this guy to be, there's a potential all-star bid there if he didn't have that little hiccup a little while ago. His ERA would be in the low 2s. Instead, it's just barely above 3. So it's been impressive to watch.
All right, we'll get to the draft, but I'm actually interested in your thoughts on this. I mean, the Nats are now 3 games short of the midway point of the season. Actually 2 games short. What am I talking about? 2 games short. They're going to end up having a winning record regardless of what happens in the next 2. But at worst case, they'll be 41-40 at the midway point. How real do you think this is in terms of their chances to be in a wild card chase in, say, early to mid-September?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Kevin, because I've kind of been debating this myself for weeks, and it's one of those things that until I see this team stop hitting, which I still haven't seen, they're one of the best offenses in the sport, and tops and runs scored, and the pitching was always going to improve over what it did in April, and that's why they've been able to win more ball games in May and June. And the defense has marginally improved, even though it's still probably by errors worst in the league. Like just those sorts of things starting to even out. And even if the offense slows down slightly, I don't see a world in which they're not going to be competitive. So, is it something that they finish the year above 500? I would love to think so. I'm not, 100% sold that that's going to be the case, but I don't have any reason to believe that they can't be at the 75 plus win mark. And so, if that's the case, and that's what I'm setting the bar at, the way they're playing right now, why shouldn't they be in the wild card chase? Why shouldn't they be playing for something meaningful going into September? So I think it'd be crazy right now watching this team every night and the way that they come together and the way that they've created a great chemistry with each other to say, no, there's no chance that they can make it in the playoffs. There's no chance they could be in the wild card. It's still not like it's a, 75% chance or a 50% chance. But there is a chance, absolutely. I think that this team, come September, we're watching the standings, we're keeping up, we're scoreboard watching across Major League Baseball for this team to potentially get into the back end of the wild card.
Yeah, I think I did the math on this, that there are like 30 games between now and the trade deadline. So if they basically played 500 ball, they're at 56 and, 53 at that point. And I'm wondering how you would see the mindset of not only, the new front office, but ownership in terms of how they would approach that trade that deadline. Sellers, buyers, or just standstillers?
Yeah, I'd say you're closer to standstill than anything. I think you run the risk. The big discussion is C.J. Abrams. I think if they're anywhere near where they're at right now, and frankly, I just don't see a way that they bottom out enough where they're 10 games under 500 and the bottom fell out and all of a sudden you're talking about next year and beyond. I don't see that really happening before the trade deadline. But if that were the case, maybe it's a more real discussion. But as far as where they're at right now, I don't think CJ is on the trade block anymore. Maybe that's something that still happens in the off season. but I don't see any way that if they're going the way that they're going, that you trade your second best bat and potentially in your first year as a front office, ruin some of the relationships you have with the guys, because that is something that seems like they've done a really good job of. There's a transparency and a good relationship between the players, the coaching staff, and the front office, it seems like over there. So I think trading CJ would kind of hurt that a little bit, obviously. And I think if there's anything that they would do, it would be some marginal move for a pitcher, whether it's going and getting a reliever or whether it's maybe trying to get some back-end starter that has 2 or 3 years of control. My thought process is anybody I'm trading for, I want through at least 2028 with the uncertainty of next year's lockout. So if I can get Garrett Whitlock is a name that is interesting, a reliever for the Red Sox. He was on Jeff Passan's top 100 trade targets article, and that's somebody that's under control with club options through 2028. Saboni has some familiarity from his time in Boston. I'd just be curious about the price. The thing that I think the Nationals could trade from is some of their depth in their farm system. You look at the outfield right now at the major league level, and they've got 4 legitimate guys that are under control for a while and probably aren't going anywhere. And Dalen Lyle, James Wood, Dylan Cruz, Jacob Young. Maybe you could say that you could consider JY as a trade piece, but I don't see that being the case with how much they really like his defense. So if that's the case, you've got 4 guys in AAA, Kevin, that could all be on the major league roster, and it wouldn't be a shock. So at some point, you got 8 outfielders for 4 spots. So maybe you move 1 or 2 of those guys for some sort of an arm that can help you this year, but it's more still thinking towards 27 and 28. But I think that might be the type of move they make. It's not going to be any crazy buy. I don't think they'll do any crazy selling. I think it's more so, maybe a soft buy of sorts.
By the way, Dylan Cruz is above 200 now. He's hitting 209 after last night going 2 for 5. He's 5 for his last 13 with a couple of home runs and 3 RBIs. So he has gotten it going a little bit. All right. That's not why I called you, but I'm glad we had that conversation because it is getting more interesting, and we're going to have a lull here coming up in sports talk radio, and it's nice to have a competitive baseball team at this point in the season for the first time since 2019. All right, so what do you want them to do tonight, and what do you think they'll do?
Yeah, I want AJ DeBonsa. I've been all over AJ throughout the entire season, and one of the things that I think is hilarious, Kevin, is some of the narratives that go around when you get past the season and you get into the draft cycle, whether it's the NFL, now the NBA, right? Darren Peterson was thought to be the top guy until like mid-January. So this idea that, the Wizards could take Peterson and that's shocking. That's not shocking at all. He was the guy until, halfway through January. And I remember I went down to Virginia Tech to watch Tech and Duke and was impressed by Cam Boozer. And I went to the bar that night to watch some games, and sure enough, there's Darren Peterson just hanging it all over BYU. So it's not not that shocking.
Then he sat the second half. Yeah. Correct.
And obviously that's some of the question marks about him. But for me, I've always liked the guy that I feel is more versatile with his size in DeBonsa. So that's who I would go with. I kind of think that's where they're leaning. But I thought it was interesting from John Wall yesterday saying that with them signing Trae Young, which, again, I don't know how much that can really maybe the long-term aspect of it, but Trae Young was always going to be on this basketball team next year. They were going to find one way or another to keep this guy around. So I don't know how much the idea of having Trae Young changes what you're going to do in the draft. I also, frankly, don't think it should. I think you take the best player that you deem there. But if you're going for best fit right now, off-ball capabilities-wise, I think Darren Peterson's better. But I think they really like AJ. I think they like his ability to get downhill. I think they believe in his ability to develop as a defender as well with that size. And that's personally where I would go. I kind of think that's where they're going to go as well.
Yeah, I'm totally with you and just talked about it in the first hour of the show. Nothing about Trae Young's deal should influence who the Wizards take. They should be trying to take the best player that has a chance to be a true star 4, 5, 6 years down the road. I actually think from a basketball perspective, that's Peterson, but there are obviously a lot of questions around Peterson. And I do think it was interesting because Max played for me what Wall said. I tend to agree with John. I think it's a positionless league now anyway. I think Peterson can play off the ball. I think he can play on the ball. I actually think Trae Young, believe it or not, would actually be okay off the ball as a catch and shoot guy. It's not what he wants to do, but I wouldn't be worried about the right fit. Just get the right player. So what did you think? And we're talking to Toby Altizer. Toby and Ben Strober will be on draft coverage starting at 9 o'clock tonight following the Junkies on the Team 980. So what did you think of the Trae Young deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, Kevin, where the number is a lot larger than anybody thought. So naturally, it's going to be something that you look at and you're like, I don't think that's the right deal for the Wizards. But for me, I like the trade to go get a guy like a Trae Young. And then I think in the situation where they were at, after you trade for a guy like that, we didn't know what was going to happen with his player option. I think most of us assumed he was going to pick it up. But then after it was obvious that he wasn't going to pick it up, you can't let the guy walk. You can't just let him play a couple of games here and then let him walk. Like some people are saying, like, oh, it's a terrible deal. David Aldrich was on with G&D yesterday and was like, everybody else on the roster is making rookie salaries or minimal contracts. So, yeah, it's an overpay of sorts, but when you have everybody else on an affordable deal and not going to have to get paid for, most of that contract for Trae Young, yeah, it's an overpay, but it's worth it to make sure that you have the guy on your basketball team. And so I don't mind it. I know it might look bad in a couple of years. I know, in 2 years, I'm sure in the offseason, we're looking like Trae Young's making how much? And maybe that's going to be some of the discussion. But I think in the time period that it is, sometimes in sports, you can't always bargain hunt. You can't always do that. Sometimes you just got to pay what it costs. And Trae Young, unfortunately, costs more than all of us expected, but I think it's worth it.
Do you think Anthony Davis is on this roster this year and much beyond?
I think he's on the roster to start the year because I don't know where this idea that some people are getting that you can just have Anthony Davis recoup value sitting on the Wizards bench and then you could trade him. I don't see where that idea came from. The Wizards traded next to nothing to get him, so you're not going to be able to get much in return. I think the only way you can get anything in return for him is if he plays some games here and looks like Anthony Davis again. Now, the main part is, can he stay healthy and on the floor for that time frame? But I would expect him to start the season here, and then anything past that is gravy. I would not be surprised if he, plays a little bit here and then gets moved, or, maybe it is something that if they're playing a little bit better than expected, maybe they try to ride it out. But I wouldn't expect him here past this season, though.
Give me some other players in the draft that you really like. And if the Wizards, and there have been some stories out there, if they decide to try to get back into the middle or the latter portion of the first round, who do you think who do you think they should target?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because now you've seen some movement. Obviously, the Bucks trade last night, getting back to 13. They have 2 picks at 10 and 13. So could maybe they look at a guy that they like and they take them at 10, and then they're more willing to trade that 13th pick that they got from the Heat to the Wizards for, player or something like that. And that's how the Wizards get back in there. I'd be interested in trying to get a big man, Kevin. I think you look at this roster now and they've got plenty of wings. Even if they draft Peterson, like they've still got a depth of wings. Adding Peterson would give them, some pretty good guard depth as well. The place that's really lacking is, assuming Anthony Davis plays the first game and you've got Alex Sarr, who the heck is coming off the bench for those guys?
Yeah.
Will Riley's more of a wing than a big. Tristan Vucevic leaves a lot to be desired. He's, a young guy, but it's just, there's not a lot there defensively. So I would like to see them go after a big man. Maybe you got the guy out of Michigan, Mara, if he falls a little bit. So that would be the thing that I'm targeting, is just getting some size. And obviously, you're going to add a star player at 1, but then if you can get back into that lottery and add another big to be that backup that you can develop behind Sarr and Davis, I think that's kind of where they need to go.
Toby, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. And we'll be listening tonight.
Absolutely, Kevin. Appreciate you having me on.
Toby Altizer, everybody. 9 o'clock tonight, 9 to 11 with Ben Strober. Ben will jump on with us next hour to talk Wizards and NBA draft. But Toby's really good, does a really good job for this station and 106.7 The Fan. All right. It is draft night. The Wizards have number 1 overall. Kind of a big deal to have number 1 overall. So we're here finally. I want to know who you think they will take, and who do you want them to take? And then I want you to name, other than DeBonsa, Peterson, Boozer, and Caleb Wilson, I want you to give me, if you want to, I want you to give me your favorite player in the draft after that list. I'll give you mine, and I'll give you a couple of players throughout the rest of the show that I think are going to be good players in the NBA, regardless of where they get picked. But phone lines are open, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What do you want the Wizards to do? What do you think the Wizards will do? And then give me a player outside the what appears to be the obvious top four that you're in love with and you think is going to be a really good NBA player. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. All right, phone lines are open at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Who do you think the Wizards will take? Who do you want the Wizards to take tonight at number 1 overall? And then give me a player that, maybe two, you can give me up to two players that you really have a strong feeling about that are kind of outside the top 4. Right now, the top 4 are A.J. DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, and Caleb Wilson. Those 4 players seem to be givens to go 1 through 4 in some order tonight. Probably Peterson, DeBonsa, Peterson, Boozer, and then Caleb Wilson. But give me somebody starting at number 5 and going back even into the second round. Just players that you've, in your conversations with your boys, have said, man, I think that dude's going to be a really good NBA player for whatever reason. Because I've got 3 or 4 of those guys. So let me start with this. I do think the Wizards are going to take DeBonsa. And I think that's a high ceiling, high floor pick, and clearly very few intangible boxes to check or to decide on, because they've already been checked, versus the Darren Peterson story, which now I think everybody knows you've got to get really comfortable. As I've said before, DeBonsa is a really good player. I think he's going to be a big-time NBA scorer. I love his stroke, so I don't think that he's going to be somebody that struggles from behind the arc. I kind of like the alpha mentality. I think there are a lot of guys that look like DeBonsa at the NBA level, but I certainly see a guy that is eventually going to average 23, 24, 25, maybe even more than that a game as a true scorer. And I really like the player. And I think he's going to be really good. I don't think he's a future MVP, and that's what you're looking for at number 1. But I certainly think that A.J. DeBonsa has, NBA all-star potential. I personally, just from a basketball standpoint, been talking about it the last 2 days, I really like Darren Peterson. I just think this is one of the most effortless scorers I've ever seen at the college level. But you've got to make sure that everything else is fine. You've got to make sure that this guy isn't suffering from, panic attack syndrome or anxiety issues or, true medical or, physical medical issues. There's a lot going on. You got to make sure, as John Fanta told us, 3 or 4 weeks ago, that the people around him that have a lot of say are understanding that as an NBA player, they don't have a say anymore. This is the team that's employing him that has the final say. So there's a lot there. I get it. And if they back off that, I understand it. I just, from a basketball standpoint, believe that Peterson does have that sort of future MVP potential talent. By the way, I really like Caleb Wilson too, and I would take Wilson over DeBonsa. That's just me. Again, love DeBonsa too. But I think Peterson and Wilson and even Acuff Jr. are the players that I think are destined to be stars in the NBA. Peterson, of course, with all of the personal stuff. If you just excluded that, you can't. But just from a basketball standpoint, because in terms of the other players not in the top 4, I love Darius Acuff Jr. I think he's Dame Lillard. I think there's a little bit of Jalen Brunson in him. I think there's a little bit of Jamal Murray in him. But I think this dude is just a flat-out scorer and playmaker. And I don't care about his size. We've already seen it with Brunson. I don't care. I do care that he seems to be a conscientious objector to playing defense. I do care about that. But he is going to be a big-time scorer at the NBA level as a scoring point guard. I love Acuff Jr. There are other players, and I'll kind of, sprinkle them in through the rest of the show. But let me just tell you, I love Mara from Michigan. I think it's 7'2", 7'3". He's got great feet, great hands, really good feel for the game. He's an excellent passer. And I think actually his stroke is a decent one, and he could develop into a guy that could knock down, jump shots. So I like Mara, and I like Isaiah Evans from Duke. He's just a flat-out shooter. He's a catch-and-shoot guy. He's a shoot-off-the-dribble guy. He's in traffic. He can shoot it and score. He's a scorer, too. I like Isaiah Evans from Duke as well. There are a couple of other players that I really like. I'll sprinkle them in during the course of the rest of the show, but I think it's going to be DeBonsa. My preference, if you checked all of the medical and psychological boxes, would be Peterson. I absolutely love Darius Acuff Jr. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. We've got a couple of lines open if you want to jump on and weigh in on the Wizards having the number one pick for the first time since 2010 when they selected John Wall overall. Let me get you on record, Max. On record, okay. Who do you think they'll take? Who do you want them to take? And give me a player that you're just enamored with outside the top four.
All right, so I think that they will take AJ DeBonsa tonight. I would like, the more we talk about Darren Peterson and his ceiling and his scoring ability, the more I'm convinced that he's probably going to be the best player in this draft. Because we see it all the time with guys, a bunch of question marks, and then they hit NBA and all of those go away because they're being so well taken care of by these teams. So I think Darren's going to be A-okay. He'll be just fine. But a guy I am kind of enamored with, especially after the news about Dusty May yesterday, Yaxel Lindenborg.
Yeah, he's ready to go, too, at 24.
Yeah, he's ready to go. He's NBA ready. Mavs are sitting there at 9, but this whole draft season, people have been talking about him going to the Thunder, but now with this little wrinkle, Thunder might be a little antsy. I'm very interested to see what happens there late in the lottery tonight.
All right, 301-230-0980. If you want to jump on, we've got a couple of lines open. Who do you think the Wizards will take? Who do you want them to take at number one? And then give me a player kind of outside those top four. DeBonsa, Peterson, Boozer, and Wilson, who you are absolutely sure is going to be a big-time NBA player. Let's start with our guy, Mark in Largo. Mark, go ahead.
AJ DeBonsa is, as a lot of comps have got him as the next Tracy McGrady. I'll take that over anything for Darren Peterson. Let me say this about Darren Peterson. You know, this is the difference between the NFL and the NBA. If Darren Peterson was an NFL player, he would be sliding right down to the 20s because of his attitude. The Washington Wizards, Kevin, and you know this better than anybody because you're a lot older than me, and they haven't won a title since 1978. They can't afford to take someone
you're the absolute best. I look forward to these calls more than any other. All right, go ahead. Because I'm so much older than you, what is it that I should know more than you?
Okay. Let me get to the point. Darren Peterson is in my opinion, could be another John. Yeah, he could be a great player, but then he could be another John Morant. He could be another Zion Williamson. See, all of y'all are sitting up here talking about, look at his talent, he's this and that. He's no different than Trey Johnson. If you look at his game and you look at Trey Johnson's game, I would take Trey Johnson. And I guarantee you on a one-on-one game, Trey Johnson would bust his behind on the court. Because he's not bigger than Trey.
Well, we can get to the one-on-one games after the season because that really doesn't matter. By the way, I love Trey Johnson. I loved him last year, as you know, and I still love him after watching him this year. I think he is a really good player. They're different players, though. They're different players.
Well, here's the problem with the league, and this is why I say the league has an image problem. This is why the league can't find an American face. You have an American face with DeBonsa that you can make the face of the league. Darren Peterson, I agree with Stephen A. I'm tired of the conversation that we're having about Darren Peterson. Yeah, he could do this, he could do that, but what about his attitude off the court?
Look, I'm worried about it too. I was talking about it all season long. I'm like, this guy is costing himself. But there could be reason. I don't want to take him, Mark, if he's got issues. I don't want to take him. But when I watched him play, when he did play, Mark does this thing, by the way, when after he's talked for a while, he just continues to talk when the host is talking.
I'm not talking right now.
Trey John, I don't think I've ever seen a player that scored in the way that he scored at the college level. It was so smooth and effortless. Trey Johnson, to me, is much more of just a pure shooter. And by the way, a stone cold, deep shooter. I love Trey Johnson. I like his game a lot. Darren Peterson's different. He's a little bit bigger. I'm not saying taller, but a little bit bigger, stronger, and I think is more of a scorer than Trey Johnson. But I like Trey Johnson. And if they pick Tabonsa, I'm not going to be unhappy about it, because if I were the guy, calling his doctors and calling his, doing all the due diligence, he might be off my board. I've acknowledged that. I completely agree with that.
Well, let me say this, Kevin. The Wizards haven't done anything since the 70s. They can't take Darren Peterson. You can't. Because they haven't done anything in the 70s. And remember, it didn't go well with Gilbert Arenas 16 years ago. I get that. But there's just too many red flags with Darren Peterson, man.
Yeah.
Too many red
well,
flags.
Look, I mean, you remember, the 60s teams when they were in Baltimore with, all of those great players. And so I appreciate the call. Thanks, Mark and Largo. We got to move on now to our next caller. But I hope that Winger and Dawkins aren't making decisions based on the fact that they haven't been in the NBA Finals since 1979. None of that should factor in to their decision-making. They should be trying to draft the player that they think has the best chance to be a superstar, an elite-level player, as a 24, 25, and 26-year-old and beyond. 25, 26, 27-year-old. That's what they should be trying to do. And by the way, if that player doesn't exist in their mind, they should try to trade the pick. Or if they can't trade the pick because everybody feels the same way, you just take the best player available. That's what you do in an NBA draft when you're at number one. You don't care what you have on your roster. You don't care what you might have on your roster. You're trying to draft the next, true superstar that can lead you to an NBA title. That's what you're trying to do. I think that in this draft, Darren Peterson, Caleb Wilson are those kinds of players that could potentially get their way down the road. But of course, I'm concerned about Darren Peterson's, other issues. They're obviously real issues. You can't, if you're not, I've heard these comps to Kobe Bryant. I'm like, Kobe Bryant would have he would have wheeled himself out if he had one limb left to play against Arizona at Fog Allen. This guy said, no, thank you, 30 minutes before tip. Now, again, there could be some real reasons, and those reasons could be scary reasons in terms of, steering clear of it, even if they're issues that the young man's been dealing with that are physical or mental, and you'd want him to get him taken care of. But yeah, I just like him as a player. I don't know the rest of it, but the rest of it is concerning from afar, no doubt about it. All right, if you want to weigh in, 301-230-0980, phone lines are open. Who do you think the Wizards will take? Who do you want them to take? And then give me another player or two that you're in love with after, say, the top four, which seem to be etched in stone in some order. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Also, you can watch this show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. I'll give you another player that I really like, and I've liked him since the beginning of the year. I mentioned, guys like I love Acuff Jr., but beyond sort of even the top 10, getting into the back half of the first round and even into the second round, I really like Mara. I really like Isaiah Evans from Duke. I'm a big Koa Pete fan from Arizona. I think he's going to be a really good player. The reason he's going to get picked later in the first round is because nobody thinks he can shoot. And the mechanics aren't great. I will agree with that. But my God, for a guy that is 6'7", 6'8", with big hands and a big body at 250, he is a phenomenal passer and an outstanding finisher. He's got incredible basketball IQ. And yeah, in today's game, you got to be able to shoot the ball when you're that size. Or you don't get guarded in the same way. But I really like Koa Pete from Arizona. There are a couple of Arizona players that I really like. But I think that if he had come back, I think he should have gone back to Arizona for one more year, improved his shot, and then I think we'd be talking about him in 2027 as an easy top 10 pick. I also, looking down my list, I also really like Jaden Bradley from Arizona. 6'3" guard, relentless competitor, super high motor. Love him as a player. He's probably a second rounder in terms of looking at most of the mocks. I believe Braden Smith will absolutely be in the league forever. He was, the best point guard in America, really, 4 years at Purdue. Braden Smith, people will say he's too small at 5'11", 6 feet. He's really good with the handle, really getting separation, high IQ, great passer. I think creates space to get his shot off. I think Braden Smith may not be a full-time starter in the NBA, but I think he's going to be in the NBA for a long time. And I'm a big fan of a guy that I don't even know if he'll get picked in this draft. But I watched Nick Martinelli at Northwestern no less than a dozen to 24 times during his career. And he is a 6'7", 230-pound forward who just can play basketball. On a team that wasn't very good this past year at Northwestern, averaged 23 points per game. He's not overly athletic, but just can play. You might look at Nick Martinelli and say, yeah, that's the kind of dude that's really good in college, with Pat at 6'7" and 230 and just can play, but will absolutely be a liability in so many different ways at the next level. I don't know. I felt the same way, not the exact same way. I felt the same similar way about Jaime Jaquez when he was at UCLA and people were saying, too slow, not athletic enough. Jaquez has had a nice start to his career. By the way, part of the Giannis trade. And I think Nick Martinelli is one of those kinds of guys as well. All right, let's take a few more calls, and then Ben Strober will join us at noon. Aveen, what do you think the Wizards will do? What do you want them to do? And give me a player or two sort of outside the top four that you like a lot.
Hey, Kevin. So I think they're going to take Debansa. Just, it's an unknown, but based on the reporting and people saying, what the rest of the league thinks they're going to do, seems to be overwhelmingly Debansa. But I want them to be taking Peterson. I think you got to really take the biggest swing with the number one pick. And I just don't think you can pass up on that level of shot making. And, about fit, I know fit doesn't matter, but hey, Peterson is, I think, a significantly better for this team because both Trae Young and Debansa, they both dribble the ball a lot to be effective. And both their games are predicated off, dribbling and going and penetrating off the paint. And Debansa is just awesome off the ball. He can get open off the ball. He can spot up shoot. He has a quick release, all that. So he is a better fit, but not that it should matter that much. But the question I have for you, Kevin, then I'll listen to what you have to say is, I think both Debansa and Peterson are worthy of the number one pick. And I'm just curious to hear why you don't think Debansa necessarily has that MVP ceiling, because I think he has elite tools. I think, people his height, his length, his wingspan, they can't move not many people can move the way he does. They don't have the bend, they don't have the coordination, the explosiveness. Like, he still projects me as somebody who's unstoppable going to the rim. So just want to know why exactly you don't totally have him as, you know, a superstar upside.
Well, let me just say, I think he's going to be a very good player. I think Peterson just wowed me multiple times. By the way, I think he's got a fine release. I don't think it's super quick. If you want to see a super quick release, watch Isaiah Evans from Duke. That is a lightning quick release. It's one of the reasons I like Evans a lot. I think he's going to be a really good player. But if DeBonsa ends up being a superstar, it's not like I'm going to be floored. It's not like I think it's a massive mistake. I just like Peterson and actually Caleb Wilson a little bit more. Caleb Wilson is a bit of a mean streak killer on the court. He is a relentless rebounder and shot blocker. I think that there's a chance Caleb Wilson could end up being the best player out of this draft. I feel similarly about Acuff Jr., but I do like DeBonsa. I see the length, the wingspan, the scoring ability. I think his shot is better than what he shot in terms of percentage wise at the college level. And I think he'll be a fine shooter. I don't think he's like, he's not Anthony Edwards. He's not, in terms of the explosiveness and the finishing ability at the rim, he's obviously bigger than Edwards. I like him. I like him a lot. I think he's going to be a really good player. I like Peterson and Wilson more. That's it. If DeBonsa was in this draft and Wilson and Peterson weren't, he'd be clearly my number one. By the way, I love Cam Boozer. I think Boozer's floor is maybe the highest. I just think that anybody that can't finish consistently at the rim in college, that's a limitation that's not going to get better at the pro level. But I think Cam Boozer is 15 and 8, rack it up right now, and you're going to have a really good player and maybe on good teams throughout his career. It's an interesting draft because I think there are like 7 or 8 guys for sure that look like they've got NBA All-Star potential. We don't say that about every draft. Let's go to Will in Gaithersburg. Will, who do you think they'll take? Who do you want them to take? Will, are you there?
Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry, Kevin. How you doing?
You're on. Go ahead.
Wilson. Yeah, by far, Wilson. Caleb Wilson is, in my opinion, has the biggest upside as an overall career as a pro. I am a little ignorant. I don't watch a lot of college ball or pro ball because what I have to do on the weekends and things of that nature. But I am a Tar Heel fan, so it's not biased. I went back and looked at all these top 4. They do from Utah, Kansas, and Duke, and then went back and watched Caleb. Caleb is special, man. He's there's nothing that I've seen that he could not do. His athleticism, I believe, is above average, maybe elite because of his body control.
No, it's borderline elite athleticism, no doubt. And then you add to it like a 7'2" wingspan. Caleb Wilson had some games where if you're watching him as just a normal basketball fan, you're like, oh my God, that guy looks right now like he'd be an all-star in the NBA. And he's got a ridiculous high motor. He's super competitive. I really like Caleb Wilson a lot too. I would have loved to have seen him in the tournament. I wish he hadn't broken his hand and he could have played throughout the NCAA tournament. It would have been a fascinating watch to see what Carolina would have done with him. Let me get one more in here real quickly. Ian, go ahead. I think you've told me before that you really like DeBonsa.
I do, and I agree with you. I think if just were a normal person in Peterson, we wouldn't even have any conversation. He is, when playing, the best player. But I think given just the array of issues that he had on the court, and I said this to Grant and Danny, it's not like he went to a community college. This notion that Kansas athletic department wouldn't know how to administer creatine seems impossibly difficult to believe. That is a Power 4 program that has professional nutritionists. Like, again, something is just not adding up for me. So I would stay away from him. I would pick DeBonsa, but I also am probably in the minority. I like professional players, and guys like Cam Boozer I feel like, yes, he doesn't have that through the roof ceiling, but sometimes that's okay. Like it's okay to hit a double or a triple and have a professional then try to hit a grand slam and whip.
If they were
and end up
picking
with a
third or
John
fourth,
Morant.
I'd be thrilled with Cam Boozer. If they were picking third or fourth, I'd still swing bigger. But I just like for me, and I know I've made this comp before. It's funny because John Wall made this. I think was it Wall who made the same comp. But Tyler Hansbrough is one of the greatest college basketball players of all time, but he couldn't finish at the rim in college because his arms were short and he just could not finish enough at the rim. He got contested. He had shots blocked. And you see that with Cam Boozer. His arm length is longer than I went back and looked at the comparison. But if you can't finish consistently over college players in the paint inside 5 feet, that's a problem at the NBA level. Now, with that said, I think he's an outstanding shooter. I think he can be an outstanding three-point shooter. I think he's a great ball handler. I think he could end up becoming a really good wing, at the NBA level. So I'm with you. There's a lot to like, and the professionalism and the lack of concern about anything other than getting a pro whose father was a pro, who's, acted like a pro since he was in high school. There's something to that, no doubt. I got to run. Appreciate it, Ian. I do. There's a couple of other players I want to mention, but this is an interesting draft because you typically, I don't think, see as much in the top 7 or 8. And then there were guys that went back to school that, could have been in this draft as well. But we'll get to those. Ben Strober is our Wizards, guy for both stations. He's going to jump on next.
You got me? Okay. You can play whatever, NBA Youngboy.
From my guy Joe. You like Isaiah Evans and you didn't mention the killer that he is on the court? No, I didn't, but I understand that. I think Isaiah Evans is going to be a big-time NBA player, and I don't even know where he's mocked. It looks like probably mostly back end of the first round at this point. Isaiah Evans, Duke. He was really good for them in some of their big games in the tournament before they bowed out. And he's long, and he's got, I think, the quickest release of any shooter in this draft. All right. Oh, we got Ben on right now. Ben Strober is big part of the stations, 106.7 The Fan in particular, where he's an update anchor, a producer. He hosts the Locked On Wizards podcast. You can get that at Locked On Wizards. And Ben is a Terp. I know that. And you can follow Ben on X at Strober Sports. So I'll just start with this. Like, who do you want them to take? I mean, and then who do you think they'll take?
I want them to take AJ Debonsa first overall, and I think that ultimately is going to be the pick. I feel like if you draft Debonsa, now that you've locked in Trae Young as your point guard of the future for the next foreseeable 4 years here, which is a bit long to my liking, but at the end of the day, I think you're establishing an identity here that's going to be focused on generating looks at the rim, putting pressure on the rim, something they haven't done particularly well over the last couple of seasons. Well, you have some of your other ancillary pieces on the wing in Keyshawn George, Trey Johnson. These are going to be the guys you look in the drive and kick options to be your knockdown three-point shooters. But adding a guy like Debonsa with his ability to get to the free throw line, get touches in the paint, finish at the basket. I think he was over 5.5 field goals at the rim per game, which was one of the best marks in all of college basketball last year, or maybe was the best. I'd have to go double check on that. I ultimately think that's the direction they go in, and I think that's the one that I want the most as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that at his size, with his length, and by the way, with his aggressiveness, because one of the things I liked about him at BYU, he's an alpha. Like he was, I think he played 6 40-minute games in his last 14 or 15. But you should be able, at his size, you should be able, if you're going to be the first pick in the draft, to finish at a high rate at the rim. Let me back up for a moment. You aren't a big fan, it sounds like, of the Trae Young deal. What would you have preferred?
I would have preferred 3 years on the deal as opposed to 4, which has that player option tied to it on the final year as well.
Yeah.
The money is the money. And I guess my first reaction when I found out what the deal was is, wow, that's a lot more money than we anticipated, because this 3 years, $120 million thing was thrown around for what felt like months, what we thought this extension would look like. I think, to me, this indicates there was some sort of market for him, because I feel like this front office would be smart enough to understand that $53 million annual for Trae Young is a lot for him at this point in his career. But you do run the risk of losing him altogether completely, which at the end of the day, they didn't give up anything really to get him. They had an expiring deal they cut off of in CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert, whose contract was not the worst, but kind of looked at as a negative asset at this point, not somebody they had in their long-term future plans. But then you miss out on your floor general for this team. The reason they brought him in was to be more competitive. They think he can elevate the young players around them currently. So if you run the risk of losing him altogether and having to look elsewhere, you might end up overpaying on somebody else that's probably not as good. Because this notion that Trae Young is not a good basketball player is completely false, in my opinion. I understand he's a very negative defender, but in terms of what his offensive production is, and I think it will be now that he's had a full year pretty much to get his body healthy back right again, I think he's going to be a really good offensive player. He should make players around him better, and I think he's ultimately a great guy to have around for whoever this number 1 overall pick is, because their number 1 priority is going to be molding whoever they take first overall tonight into their franchise player.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I'll come back to that in a moment. So, I actually think, and I'm not a massive Trae Young fan, but I agree with you. He is a playmaker, and he can really create, and he can really score. But I love the thought of him and AD playing together. That's a 2-man combination, point guard and big, that I actually think really will work. And I think that they see that too. And they'd like to see what it looks like with all of their young players sort of being in I've called it, a real developmental environment where the games actually mean something and they're trying to win it. It's a much better way to evaluate Koulibaly and Sarr and Carrington and Trey Johnson and Will Riley and Keyshawn George, et cetera. And I think that's what they were going for. And let's hope, fingers crossed, Anthony Davis plays 70-plus games, because I think you and I have talked about this before. I think they could win 45-plus and be a 5 or a 6 seed next year in the East. If that happens, that's a big if. But back to the signing of Trae Young, I agree with you. Like, I can't imagine that they would overpay by this much if there wasn't another suitor or two willing to get close. So if that's true, first of all, Atlanta screwed up because they didn't think that he was going to have nearly that much value. They took an expiring contract and Corey Kispert back, as you said. Number 2 is, do you have any idea who those teams may have been that would have come with, a true max offer, because it would have been max from those teams, not from the Wizards, but with something resembling 4 for $212? Who were those teams, do you think?
To my knowledge, there's no official reporting of who the teams are, but the names that have been thrown around are Brooklyn and Chicago. The Nets have the 6 overall pick in this draft, and there's a lot of speculation that they go with one of the guard options that's available for them, whether it's going to be Keaton Wagler or Darius Acuff or somebody different altogether. I feel like that seems like what the play that Brooklyn would make, unless they had somebody else in mind. I know there's been these smoke screens that they could take Nate Ament as high as 6 overall. I don't really see that happening. I don't think he's deserving of going top 10 in this draft. Chicago is interesting as well, because I'm not exactly sure what the rationale would be, but a lot of the understanding that I have about this entire situation is that the new proposed lottery reforms, which are now, I guess, official, they made official a few weeks ago, have really made teams that are fearful of finishing at the bottom feel like it's necessary to go out and get some proven talent like Trae Young. Because if you finish in that bottom 3, you're in a very, very bad spot now. You're by no means guaranteed to even be in the top 5 if you finish with the worst record in terms of your pick. You could fall all the way to 12 now, and your odds of even landing a top pick are worse than the teams that finish 4 through 10 or whatever it is. So Young is kind of looked at as this floor raiser type of player because what he is offensively right now. And I think the Wizards ultimately, by locking him in, have kind of put themselves in a position where even if they're not ready to take the next step and be a contender in the next year or so here, which it still might take a little bit more time than that, they're not going to be a bottom 3 team in the league, which is now actually the worst place to be. Funny enough that being at
they
the
hit
bottom
the timing
is bad now.
right. Yeah, the timing was perfect for them. The last lottery that hopefully they're in for a while. I mean, they might be in some lottery. They could be in the lottery next year if AD plays 30 games.
Right.
But the timing worked out perfectly. All right, back to molding their number 1 pick into the future franchise player. So should I assume from that you don't think that any of their other young players are future franchise type of players?
Yeah, that's correct. I don't think they have the franchise altering talent on the roster until 8:05 p.m. tonight. I think that's ultimately what you're looking at here. Not to say that Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George, who I adore right now, I think those are some of the 2 best youngest players they have right now, and maybe both top 5 players from that draft class respectively, which is considered a weak one. But to me, those seem like great pieces on a really good contending team. They don't seem like the true number 1 option. It's so important in the NBA that if your number 1 option is who you're looking at to be the moon, the sun, the entire solar system of your operation, they have to really be up for it. They have to be a true number 1 option in this league. And I think the mistake that the previous administration did, obviously, with Beal, is they believed him to be that type of player when he never exactly was. You need somebody that really can win you a lot of basketball games, put you in a position to actually have a real chance when you get to the playoffs. So I think George and Sarr and a lot of the other young pieces they have right now, I really like Trey Johnson as well. Those could even be potentially all-star players at some point, but all NBA level, I'm not sure at this point. Maybe a guy like Sarr could be an all NBA player, all defensive player at some point, but these guys are not going to win you the championship on their own right now. And I don't think that ever will happen with just those guys.
All right, fast forward to, let's just say, March of next year, and the Wizards have had great health as it relates to Anthony Davis specifically, and they're hovering in that 4, 5, 6, 7 range in the East. Give me their starting lineup right now.
So Trae Young is obviously your lead point guard, no questions there. I think Keyshawn George starts at the 2 for this team. And I know that's a bit of a hot take, and a lot of people have questions whether or not he's quick enough to keep up with some of the other fast guys that will have the ball out on the perimeter. But in terms of what you need defensively, Keyshawn George has some of the best two-way ability on this team, just because you haven't quite seen enough of the offensive stuff through the first 3 years of Bilal Coulibaly. I think Trey Johnson's a great candidate, started the 2 as well, but I could see him being their spark plug off the bench. That's just a knockdown three-point shooter. I think he fits in that role really well. So Trae Young, Keyshawn George, you're going to have A.J. Debonsa, if that is indeed the pick, starting at the 3, Anthony Davis at the 4, then Sarr at the 5.
Okay. And so Coulibaly, Trey Johnson, Will Riley. Who am I missing?
Bub Carrington could be a combo guy coming off the bench as a shooter as well. I'm interested to see what happens with a guy like Jaden Hardy.
Yeah,
Maybe
me
he gets
too.
thrown into a
I
trade.
thought he shot it really well after the trade.
He did, and they have the trade exception, which they do have to use at some point, before July 9th. So maybe he could be packaged in something. The one thing I want to know is, will this team be aggressive tonight and try to trade back into the first round?
Well, that's my next question on my list.
Let's get into that then.
Do you think they will be aggressive trying to trade back into the draft? And if so, who's it for, or what is it for?
I think they do get aggressive at some point. The precedent from this front office is there for it in all 3 years that they've had a draft class to work with, 2023, 24, and 25. They have had some form of movement. In 2023, they traded up one spot to get Bilal Coulibaly. In 2024, they shocked everybody, traded Denny Avdia on draft night, got the 14th pick, and acquired Bub Carrington in that trade. And then last year, they traded back 3 spots, got Will Riley, but they were able to use one of those picks they got from Utah to get Jameer Watkins, who I think will be a pivotal guy coming off the bench, playing some defense for him as well. Hopefully, he can develop his three-point shot. So I think if they're going to try to trade up into this draft, whether it's in the late lottery or even in the lower 20s, or something like that, you're looking at them trying to go after one of these front court options, because we know that Anthony Davis probably is not long for this Wizards organization. I think Trae Young getting that extension should be enough evidence that Anthony Davis probably is not getting extended by the organization. That would have to happen in August. But if Davis is only here for half a season or one full season, whatever it may be, I think you need to go find the succession plan for it. Somebody that's going to play next to Sarr long term. And there's a lot of good options in this draft. My favorite is Morez Johnson out of Michigan, but I feel like he's probably destined to go in the top 12. So might cost a lot if you're trying to get back into that spot. But there's other options if you're looking in the 20s for somebody. Chris Senak Jr. out of Houston, Hans Steinbach, if he's available at some point, out of Washington, could be another option you could get. He's pretty versatile. Terrace Reed Jr. from UConn. There's a good amount of options. I think they could be interested later in the first round in the front court. That's what I would do.
But you think it's a front court player that they would be trading back in for?
I'd imagine, because I think if you set your front court up for the future to be Sarr and whoever you take, like if they get Morez Johnson and AJ in this draft, they are set for a really long time, in my opinion.
If they ended up taking Peterson, which would surprise you, what would be your reaction to it?
I'd be pretty excited about it still. Darren Peterson is an unbelievable prospect. He's one of the better guard prospects we've seen in recent years. Just sheer talent, scoring the basketball, the ability to score at multiple levels is very impressive. It scares me a little bit. I know the medicals check out. Like, they're not able to withhold that stuff. So all the reporting that's been done by Shams, Jeremy Wu, indicates that the medicals are not really a concern. And that's probably why he goes number 2 overall at this point. Another thing with him is, will he be able to put more pressure on the rim than he did in his freshman season? Will the playmaking numbers go up a little bit? Because obviously if you're drafting Peterson, you're not molding him into your lead guard, at least for not until probably his second contract at this point, because Trae Young is going to be here for the foreseeable future, obviously, after the extension yesterday. I don't see Darren Peterson as a point guard in the NBA. I see him as a great bona fide shooting guard in this league that can score at multiple levels. I think he's a tremendous prospect, and I'd have no doubts about what the future looks like for the organization if they did take him tonight. I'd be excited about it.
Yeah, his people seem to think that he is a point guard. I'm with you. I actually think there's great versatility. I think he could play with the ball in his hands to start and initiate possessions, but I think he can play off the ball too, which is why I would not be afraid of him and Trae Young together in the same backcourt, even early in his career, if it goes that way. Give me a player sort of outside the top or the perceived top four, which would include, after the mentioned, Boozer and Caleb Wilson. Give me you've already mentioned Merez Johnson. Give me a couple of players that you just really like, not necessarily for the Wizards, but just players that you really like.
I like Braden Burries a lot. The point
Yeah,
guard
from
out of
Arizona. I like a lot of the Arizona players.
He is mocked, I believe most things have him going number 9 to Dallas. I think that's a really good fit. I think he's going to play really well with Cooper Flagg in Dallas. He's one of my favorite guys in this draft for sure. I don't think of the other guys that I could really see. I like Acuff offensively. He's a tremendous scoring guard, and I think he's going to be instantly a really good offensive player in this league. He just didn't try at all defensively, which is really interesting to me. I don't know if that was just the way that they wanted him to play because they needed him so badly to produce on offense at Arkansas, but he really didn't give any type of effort on that side of the basketball. He's a little bit undersized, so I understand the concerns or limitations people perceive with his game, but I like Acuff a lot. I think he's going to be a tremendous scorer.
Talking to Ben Strober, Ben and Toby tonight, 9 to 11 on 980 with draft coverage. Following the Junkies from 7 to 9, they'll be live from the Anthem. Let me just get your thoughts on the Giannis trade before I let you run. Did you, if you're a Milwaukee fan, would you have preferred this deal with Miami or the deal that Boston had out there, which included Jaylen Brown and I think 2 firsts?
It's tough because if you look at the details of everything, like personally, I don't know if Giannis is really worth as much as this entire saga has been made out to be. If I were the Bucks, I would have traded him a year ago, if we're being honest. I'm not sure if his value would have been more back then, but given the injury stuff we've seen for Giannis, he struggled to be available, and I guess some of that was maybe constructed intentionally because the Bucks were kind of tanking at the end of the year a little bit, and they had the idea that they were going to trade Giannis. I just don't really know if this move makes the Heat a finals contending team is the way I want to perceive this. I don't know how much better it makes them. They're going to be better than whatever they were last year, which was barely in the play-in, missing the playoffs altogether. But I don't know if it was really worth Miami giving up guys like Yaku Chonis, who I think is actually a pretty good piece. He can shoot the ball really well. He torched the Wizards last year.
Yeah,
I think the Miami package was good enough for what the Bucks are trying to do here and kind of establish this new identity and rebuild the roster a little bit. I think that package was good for them.
What do the Celtics do with Jaylen Brown now?
So from what I've heard from people that are at the draft, they feel like the situation, the relationship between Brown and Tatum is not good at this point in time. I don't really understand why there's been this notion to break up that duo for a while now, but if the relationship is really soured in a way that's that prevalent, then I guess it's going to be a situation where they end up trading Brown somewhere else. I'm not sure the details of like what other teams exactly are going to be in on him. Do you remember any of the teams that were like thrown out in some of these rumors? I can't remember at this time.
No, other than Milwaukee.
I don't have any idea who would go get him.
Portland, I think it maybe has some interest there, but yeah. I just think if I'm a Bucks fan, I would have taken Jaylen Brown over Giannis in terms of those two players. Giannis just isn't available. Jaylen Brown is, and I think it's crazy to say this, but I think he's underrated. I think it's because he's played with Tatum, but let's not forget he was the MVP of not only the Eastern Conference Finals that year, but the NBA Finals.
Right.
In that particular year. I'm just a big Jaylen Brown fan. I think he's a killer. And if I were Milwaukee, I would have wanted something back for the player. It's kind of like, the Myles Garrett trade. It's like, if I'm going to give up Myles Garrett, I'm getting
Right.
Jared Verse back. If I'm giving up Giannis, I'm getting something back that, it's not even about selling it, but something that I know can lead me to being competitive. But they took the Miami deal, and that is a future deal for Bucks fans. Ben, great job. Appreciate it. Enjoy tonight. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Ben Strober at Strober Sports on X, and he and Toby will be doing the draft show from 9 to 11 following the Junkies tonight from 7 to 9. I do want to mention that if you've got HVAC issues, Foley Mechanical is the place to go. Dan Foley is the absolute best. So if you've got air conditioning issues, if you've got heater issues during the winter, we had some issues 7 or 8 months ago now. Dan Foley came out to our house directly. He is a guy that owns the business. It's not a franchise. It's not part of some private equity firm. He owns the business. He hires and fires. He's got high quality people. They're professional. They're skilled. They're sharp. They came out. They identified our issue. They fixed it. And it hasn't had any issues since. They are a full service. Foley Mechanical is heating, air conditioning, hot water, and boilers company. And they're the go-to for older homes with radiator heat, which is a real specialty. They work across the DMV, and they proudly install Amana HVAC equipment. If your system needs help, if you've got any issues, I promise you the way to go is Foley Mechanical. They'll do it right. Reach out to Foley Mechanical by phone, or you can go to FoleyMechanical.com and tell Dan that I sent you.
Main mic, check. 1, 2, 3. It's all the way on. Your microphone's in.
Amika wrote, Kevin, I listened to your show for your takes on American sports. Soccer is not your thing, and it's okay, but you'd be best to not get too involved in soccer analysis. And then I got this from Ryan. Ryan writes, Kevin, you say you love the World Cup, but you barely talk about it. More World Cup, please. Nobody cares about OTA practices or Brandon Ayuk. I'm telling you, I swear to God, I've had this conversation with other people that do what I do. Every 4 years, it's the same thing when the World Cup's going on. Soccer fans, come out of the woodwork, and they end up becoming, a bit confusing for people like me. If I talk about World Cup, I'm too unsophisticated to understand it, so don't talk about it. If I talk about it. If I don't talk about it, I'm an idiot for not discussing the number one sports event on the planet right now. Tom Lavero has always said, and I swear to God, there's real truth based on observance from this chair. He has said it for years, every 4 years when the World Cup starts. Soccer is the sport for non-sports fans in this country. And what he means by that is not everybody who loves soccer only loves soccer, but a lot of the people every 4 years that will start knocking people that just join the fray every 4 years are people that typically aren't into the sports that we spend a lot of time talking about, not into it hardcore, because this is an area where they can kind of feel like they can own it, like you're too unsophisticated to analyze it, or you're too stupid not to talk about it. This is our thing. We understand it. It's the beautiful game. It's too hard for you to understand. And if you did try, you just wouldn't, handle it well. We've been, we're big, AC Milan fans. We're into La Liga. We're into Champions and Premier League. And it's kind of a big deal, everywhere else but here. Look, I'll say the same thing that I've said for 12 years running, probably 12 years. I hate soccer. I can't stand it. I don't understand it, really. I'm not sure that it's because it's so sophisticated, but it's not anywhere near my favorite. But I love the World Cup. I love the World Cup. It's probably like football fans who non-football fans who say, I don't like football. It's too violent, or I just don't like it. It's just stupid. But I love the Super Bowl because of the commercials and because of the halftime show and the whole thing. I don't like soccer, but I really, really like the World Cup. And for me, the World Cup, it starts with my genuine like of it. It starts with just how important it is to everybody watching it around the world, everybody who's in these stadiums. Most of the people are, from their origin is from the country or the two countries that are playing in the game. You can see that throughout this World Cup. Stadiums are filled, but they're filled with true, supporters of the countries that are playing because that's their country of origin in most cases. So the importance to the rest of the world is intriguing. It's interesting. I love the passion that you see in their faces. I think the best part of these games are the national anthems, the emotion that you see in the players and then in the fans in the crowd. It's tremendous. The pageantry of it, the importance of it. I like that. Now, the game itself, I mean, there's just, I've gone through the list many times. The flopping is just insufferable. You can talk about the NBA all you want. This is a level that is truly fake. I mean, it's truly, I didn't get hit, but I'm going to look like not only I got hit, but I got hit by an 18-wheeler, run over by the 18-wheeler to try to draw a penalty. And then as they're rolling around on the ground, usually not for 30 seconds, they're usually down for minutes. Then you get into, well, there's nothing going on here for a few minutes. And then at the end of the half or the end of the game, you get into this imprecise timing of the game. I know that people who love the sport love it. I don't like that at all. If my team's down 1-0, I'd like to know how much time I have before the game's going to be over. That's just me. Like, in a football game, you're down 10, there's a clock and there's 7 minutes and 48 seconds left. We got to score in this possession. We got to get a stop. We got to get the ball back. In soccer, you don't really know how much time's left. Yeah, it's 45 and 90, 2 45-minute halves, but then there's the, stoppage time, the plus, and the plus is never accurate in terms of how much time was wasted with the flopping and the injuries and the celebrations from the goals and anything else that goes on. And then it's just a random whistle that goes off and the game's over. It doesn't reflect it on the clock. If it's +7 at 95 or at 90, excuse me, and you get to, sometimes the whistle will go at 96:32 and sometimes the whistle will go at 99:38. You don't know. Those are the things that I just can't imagine if I were really invested that it wouldn't be a massive problem for me. But that's how I've been trained as an American sports fan. We're into true precision, tenths of seconds. And some people think that's too much. But at least we know the game is in the fourth quarter, and we, of course, know the score, and we can kind of calculate in our minds. By the way, I don't even mind the clock going forward rather than counting down. It's simple math. If there's 45 minutes in each half, when you get to 45, the half should be over. But that's just not the way it is. The half isn't over at 45. It might be over at 49. It might be over at 52. It might be over at 46-20. But I don't like soccer. I've really tried with these big events over the years. Now, watching Messi, that's fun. Like I watched it yesterday. We talked about his 3-goal game to open up the tournament, and then he had 2 goals yesterday. By the way, he missed a penalty kick. Those penalty kicks, here comes some analysis, Amika. I can't imagine.
How do you miss?
That you can miss that. I think I could make a penalty kick. But the game itself, just a lot of, I know they call it the continuous, beautiful game. It's really not continuous. It's a lot of standing around, a lot of kicking the ball up and then kicking it backwards. And then the exciting moments aren't tremendously exciting, to be honest with you. I mean, the whole buildup to what they like to refer to as set pieces is just almost always a letdown. I mean, but look, I give it a try, and I do kind of like everything else other than the game itself, unless I'm watching something that any idiot, any unsophisticated fan, but a sports fan could identify, and that is how special Messi is. Like, I mean, the pass before his second goal last night, which came, in the 90-something minute or whatever it was, very late. Did you watch the game? I didn't ask you if you watched the game yesterday.
Yesterday, I was in studio at Sirius XM, okay. So I was not able to.
It's 1-0. They're into, I think they were in stoppage time. I don't know what it was in stoppage time, but whatever. It wasn't the goal. He misses a shot, gets the rebound, then scores. The pass, the catching of the first pass, and then the pass he makes, he's spectacular. I can identify that. I can identify how good Mbappe is watching him because I watched some of that yesterday. I did not watch the guy from Norway. He scored 2 goals again last night. What's his name again?
Erling Haaland. He is just a massive dude. There's a really funny
big dude.
BBC has this little thing where you can drop in on any player and get their POV. So people have been taking videos of the goalie point of view and having just Erling Haaland running at them. It's terrifying.
Oh, what is his size? He's a big
6'4",
dude.
6'5".
Yeah. And Messi's not big at all.
No, Messi's a much tinier fella. He's like 5'8", maybe.
Watching Messi, there is something captivating about watching him, even though a lot of it is standing around. It's interesting because I think I mentioned this before their first game, or after their first game when he scored 3 goals. I said it's so fascinating to watch him because, to be honest with you, when I watch Argentina, I'm just watching him. I'm not watching the game. I don't feel like I'm getting much from watching the whole game. So I focus in on Messi. And he's really interesting because there's literally a lot of walking and standing. And then all of a sudden he sees something and he starts gradually moving. And then all of a sudden he accelerates, and it's like, it's not always a goal, but there's something in the form of activity. Like there's a pass to him, or there's a play that's coming in his general direction where he anticipates there's going to be a deflection. I get it with Messi. You don't have to be, Mr. Pretentious Amika. You don't need to be sophisticated. You just need to be a sports fan to understand that he's different from everybody else. And and the guy, I didn't watch the Norway thing, but we did watch that first game when he had 2 goals, I think. And I said to you, is he the big dude? Because he's different on the field. I don't think is the guy Christian Pulisic or whatever, he's not where is he in terms of the players ranked in this World Cup? Is he a top 20 player in the World Cup?
Yeah, I'd put him in the top 20, but he's like by far the best kind of guy that Team USA would have to pull.
But watching him is not like watching Messi or Ronaldo.
No, it's much different. It's a much different experience.
Yeah. And by the way, the Mbappe guy, that's another one. The way he catches passes, the skill and the athleticism is not debatable. I get it. I get what kind of athlete you've got to be, and then the endurance to a certain degree, although there is a lot of standing around in soccer. And now you've got the hydration breaks. But, man, I'm telling you, and I've got so many other emails and tweets like this every 4 years. It's like, shut up. You're an idiot. You don't know what you're saying. You don't know what you're talking about. First of all, let's be fair here. I haven't analyzed any of the soccer that we've talked about. None of it. No real analysis. I'm not. See, I think somebody probably, like some of these people, they think they can analyze the game, but they're total posers. A lot of these people are. But every 4 years, it's shut up. You're too stupid. You're too unsophisticated to analyze this game. Or how are you not talking more about the World Cup? It's the biggest event in the world right now. I am definitely following it. I have followed it for many years now. And, I'm not sitting there watching every game, I'm it's not that. But when I am in this studio, I've got it on when they're playing, and there's a lot of it I enjoy. And like I've said, a dozen times now, I bet guys like Amika are probably like, wow, what a wasted ticket. Sheehan's going to the World Cup final. What a complete and utter waste. Somebody sophisticated and who understands this beautiful game should be in the stands at the Meadowlands for, I don't know. I'm thinking right now, I haven't looked at the bracket, but I'm thinking Argentina and France. There's my analysis. That's the analysis of the World Cup today. I'm thinking Argentina and France. Is the bracket set up where they could be on opposite sides and play each other in the final? You don't know.
I'm not 100% sure, but if you recall the 2022 World Cup, you were predicting a rematch of the final from 2022.
Oh, Argentina beat France in the final?
Yeah, that's what I was looking up when you asked that question. That's why I didn't answer.
Okay, sorry. Okay. I'm just saying that to me, those two teams,
I don't blame
through
you.
the first 2 games, and I know that people really like Spain.
Spain's very good.
I know people think Brazil's very good, right?
Very much so.
We're missing one other team, not Portugal. Portugal plays today, I believe.
They do. They actually kick off here in a few minutes.
Spain, France,
England is
Argentina.
always up there.
Oh, England. There are a lot of people that think that England's really good this go around, but don't they always think that about England?
Mm-hmm. It's always coming home, and then it's not.
Right. Because they haven't won since 66.
It's been
I know that.
forever.
I know that. I'm enjoying it. Can't wait for the knockout stage because it would appear that the U.S. essentially has nothing to play for in their game against Turkey on Thursday? I think they
Germany.
play Thursday.
Germany's another one that
Germany's another one, but I've had people mention to me that because I've mentioned Germany before, and they say this is not one of Germany's best teams. Same with Belgium, I believe.
Yeah, Belgium's
not
been
one of
struggling
their
a little bit in
best.
the group stage too, but the Netherlands have also been really fun.
But the U.S., what are they going to do against Turkey? They're not going to play Pulisic, are they?
I honestly, it's a 10 o'clock kick. I really don't think that they've already
10 o'clock kick.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock kick.
Oh,
I know, but
I don't care. I'll watch it.
Yeah, I'll be up.
I would think that that's not their best chance to get the best audience.
Right. But I mean, they've already locked up the group. So this game is more of just like we're playing to play it at this point. So I really don't think that they're going to be going too all out. I mean, it's time to kind of rest up and get healthy for this group for elimination stages.
Yeah. All right. Today, though, you do have this will be an interesting thing today with Portugal playing. Is Ronaldo going to start or is he going to come in off the bench? I think he's going to start. You know what? I'm rooting for him to have a really good bounce back game. Bounce after the game he had in the first game. All right. There you go. That's our World Cup talk for the day. Back in a minute. CJ Abrams and James Wood are going to be on Chris's show at 1:10. Two, I think, absolute locks to be all-stars next month. Will join Chris in studio at 1:10 today. The Nats beat the Phillies last night 4-1, and another really good pitching performance last night for one lefty, Foster Griffin, who went 7 1/3, gave up 4 hits and just 1 earned run. The Nats back to 3 games over 500 and tied for that last wild card spot in the National League. Again, the season that was not expected continues to roll on as we are just 2 games short now of the halfway mark of the season. All right, so tonight it's a big night, when you have the number 1 pick and you've done what the Wizards have done for the last 3 years, and you have drafted, fairly well, the players they've picked, the trades they've made. Let's face it. I mean, you can botch this and you can do it well. And I'd lean much more in the direction of Will Dawkins and Michael Winger doing it well. It doesn't guarantee anything. But they've added some really good young talent. They have a cupboard full of draft picks moving forward. They got lucky in the lottery finally and were able to get a number 1 pick. It's too bad that it wasn't in the Wemby draft of 2023 or even last year's draft with Cooper Flagg. But this is big tonight, but it's not the end-all be-all. The players that they've picked already, all of these new players, the number 1 picks that they've accumulated over the last 3 years. I mean, you've got to get a lot of production out of that. And I think there is promise. My favorites so far of their young players, Sarr, Keyshawn George, who I loved right from the jump. I'm becoming a big Will Riley fan. I like Trey Johnson. I think Koulibaly is going to be continue to grow and evolve into a better offensive player. He's already an outstanding defender. There's a lot to like about their young players. Even in the AD trade, the Anthony Davis trade, they pulled back Jaden Hardy from Dallas. Hardy really shot it well. If you watched him, early on, it's like, why isn't that guy a better shooter statistically? And then all of a sudden, his percentage was outstanding. There's a lot to like, but they've got, and we have to see it in real basketball games, because what they've been doing for 3 years has been more exhibition-like. Their opponents haven't taken them seriously. The games weren't focused on win at all costs. And so that's what they're going to get into next year. And yes, it would be incredible if the player they add tonight ends up being a franchise type of player. We had Ben Strober on. He made a really good point, and I've emphasized this before. All-star is much different than all-NBA. First team, second team, all-NBA, we're talking about elite-level players. There are a lot of guys that end up in the all-star game that are not elite franchise build-around players. Are they going to get that tonight? We went through the list, 26 number 1 picks this century. 14 of them have really worked out well. 12 of them have not. So it's nearly a coin flip as to whether or not you'll hit on this pick. And this is one of those drafts where there isn't a Wemby, there isn't a Cooper Flagg, there isn't a Zion Williamson, and he hasn't even turned out well at this point. There isn't a LeBron. There isn't, a Dwight Howard. There is a choice, apparently, between 2. Can't wait to talk about what they do on tomorrow's show. Looking forward to tonight. Thanks to Ben Strober. Thanks to Toby Altizer for joining us on the show today. Chris is next.